Hello everybody. Today we are going to look a little more closely at the server client round robin chat program. So we've gone over this program before, but what I want to take a look at today is I've got the server here and the client here. Let's take a little bit closer look at the commands that we're issuing, and let's draw a pictorial representation of what's actually happening to have a clearer picture. So one of the things that I've added here is I've added the OS module I'm importing on the server, and I'm printing out the PID of the server. The PID stands for process ID, so we'll know what the process number is in the computer of this program. I've taken away some of the comments to be able to fit the program in the window properly. And the other thing which I've done is I'm printing out S, which is the socket that I'm binded to and listening on. Then, after I've accepted a connection on that socket, and some people have been asking, well, what's a connection? A connection is simply another socket, but one that has the other end connected. So you can think of a connection as a connected socket. I'll draw a picture of this. So first let's start here, and let's draw a picture of these two guys. So here we have a computer, and this is the server. We'll just draw it as a box. Okay, and here we have another computer, and this is the client. And here we have another box. Okay. Now usually these two computers are separate computers, so I'm going to start out doing the demonstration this way. Now once we start the server process, think of this process here as this thing. This is Python. Okay. And so where are we right now? Well, right now think of it as we're on line 14. So we're waiting for an incoming connection. We have bound to here on line 10. We have bound and we're listening. If you're wondering what listen is, it's not exactly what you might think. So if we come over here, we'll get back to this. This is actually a web page that I really highly recommend you read. But here, let's take a look at what listen says. So it says enable a server to accept connections. So that's important. If backlog is specified, which is what's in the brackets here, it must be at least 0. It specifies the number of unaccepted connections that the system will allow before refusing new connections. Okay? So let's go back to the code. Actually, let's just minimize this so we can see everything back again. Now, let's go back to it for a sec. I also forgot to show you bind. So let's also search for .bind. And so .bind, bind the socket to the address. The socket must not already be bound. In other words, it can't already be in use. If you try to bind to a socket that's already being used, then it won't work. So that's bind and listen. So let's go back to the code now, and let's go back to line. We're on the server side. Let's go back to line 14. Now at this point, this is what the picture looks like. We've created the socket. Oops. where's my pen? Here it is. We've created the socket. Consider the socket to be that. And so remember, this is the Python process. Okay? We don't know the PID of it yet because we haven't run it. So why don't we do that? So let's come over here and let's run this guy. So Python 3, and it's TCP received 3. And I just took out the comments here, and we're going to bind to port 5555. Okay, so now it says PID is 11.9.10. Great. Okay. So let's go back to this thing. And so this thing has a PID of 11.9.10. That's the process ID in the computer. But is this 555? No, it's not. Okay. The 555 is a port. This is port 5555. But that's on the computer. That's not the Python program. So right now what we've done is we're listening on that guy. But it's not a connection yet because there's no other end to it. All right? So we're simply listening at this point. And so you might think of it as, this is called, I'm using the wrong place. So this is called, let's call this one S. Okay? So if we go back, right now, this hasn't returned yet. Oops, wrong place. This line 14 hasn't returned yet. But what has printed out? Well, the PID is printed out. We put that down. Now, what is S? Because we've printed S right here. So S is a socket with a file descriptor of 3. Now, if you're wondering what a file descriptor is, so in Unix or Linux, file descriptors go like 0, 1, 2, 3. And if I remember correctly, standard input has file descriptor 0, standard output has file descriptor 1, and standard error has file descriptor 2. These are integers which are specific to the program. Okay, so to the Python program, which allows the operating system to create communication channels for that process. Now, just think, right? What's a communication channel? Well, you could have a communication between the Python program and your keyboard. That's file descriptor 0, input. You can have communication between your program and the screen, which is what you're looking at right now. That's file descriptor 1. So all these things are communication channels. So basically they're called file descriptors, a way to access those. But remember, I'm saying it again, they're process specific. So each process has their own file descriptors. Now, here again, in address family internet and sock stream, which is TCP, and it says local address is 127.0.0.1, which is localhost, and port 555. So this is what that so far looks like. Okay? But at this point, we're now blocking on line 14. Okay? Let's go ahead and connect the client. So before we connect the client, actually, I almost forgot. Let's go back here, and I have this command line program called netstat, and P says, this thing here, the P is for print the process name. A is show all connections, both listening and established. N is for don't resolve names, and T stands for TCP. And I'm just gonna look for the ones that are significant to what we're doing, which is Python, and address is actually also just to see the heading. So there you go. So at this point, it says, yep, there's a local, think of it as a not a connection, but a socket, local socket, host, or IP and port, and there's no foreign connection, but it's listening. And there's the PID. Notice that PID is the same PID as the process we're running. Perfect. Okay. Now let's go ahead and connect the client. Now, notice that when the client connects, let's go back here and let's take a look again at the same thing. Now we've got 3. Notice that now, so now as soon as you see established here, this means that that's a connection. Okay? So notice that the local address is port 555, and now the remote one is, again, localhost, which is the same computer. That's all I can do right now. But it's this super high port, 45,760. So let's go back here, and let's take a look at the process ID of this. It's 12,088. Notice there is the... So what this means is that this connection is the client, and this one is the server. Okay? What's interesting though is that the server PID has 2. One's listening and one's established. So this is cool because what this means now is that, so S was the listening one, but now when this returned, s.accept is kind of waiting, right? Line 14 is waiting for a connection. And then on line 9 here, we connected, and that causes line 14 to return. But you notice here, we don't have a variable called con. That doesn't matter, okay? Because both here, this con variable is an established socket, okay? Or it's like a connected socket. This socket automatically is connected as soon as this guy says, basically this says, oh, can I connect? And then the server says yes, and it allows the connection to proceed. Just ignore the phone. And so what I wanted to do here is that, oh guys, just ignore the phone, guys. Eventually it'll go to voicemail. So what I wanted to do is, oh gosh, this is really annoying. Okay, well, I better remember next time to turn off my phone. So let's see here, where was I? It's kind of broken my train of thought here. Let's go back here. And so what's going on here is that, yeah, we've got 2. So why 2 more? And I'll explain why. Let's go to the picture and I'll show you what's happening. So there is a Python program here as well. And this one has a socket, and this one is S. But you see, there is a port here as well. But this port, okay, let's see what port number it is. It's 45,760. 45,760. So this is 45,760. But what's kind of cool about this is now we have another socket here, and this goes through the same port through here and connects to here. Okay, So this one is the S is the listening one. This is the one that listens, okay, or is bound. But this one is the one that got created. This socket got created, and now notice that if we go back, notice that this guy now has two. So this one was the first one that got printed. Notice that there's no remote address on this socket S. When we printed it, there's no remote address on it. It's just local. It's just listening. Then as soon as line 14 returned, now just disregard that garbage I was accidentally typing in there. Now when I print con on line 15, this is also a socket. Now it's a different file descriptor for, it always goes up one after the other one, ones that aren't used. So so basically 0, 1, 2, 0, 1, 2 were used for input, output, and error, and then S was 3, and now con is another socket which takes file descriptor 4. And notice here that this one has a local host and port. By the way, same as S. But what differentiates this one is that this one also has a remote endpoint. Okay? And that's the client. Okay? And notice this was the PID of the client. And that doesn't show up here, but when we go over here, the client PID shows up here, and it tells us that from the client's perspective, the local port was 45760. Okay? So the reason why I see both here is because, well, I'm running both programs on the same computer. Okay? So in essence now, what happens is, what's the next thing that happens? This is now blocking. Okay, so this is now saying I want some data on this established connection. This guy is now blocking for keyboard. So I can type in a message, hit enter, and then this now returns, and it prints out what it said. And now it's blocking here. Okay? So I can now say something back, and so now this guy gets it, and this will keep going back and forth until the only way this is going to break is if somebody says bye. Okay? So at this point I could say bye, and actually no, it has to be the server. So the server has to say bye, and so boom, now it stops. Notice that it sends the bye first, and it receives the bye, and it breaks here as well and closes it, but it doesn't matter because this is closed as well first. So that's what happens. Now understand something, that in this example we had the client send first. We don't have to have it that way. So we could change it. So for example, I could go here and I could take this receive part out here, and I could just go, I could delete that, and then I could put it here. Oops, not there. But there. I think my tab's not working right here. There. So first, I'm going to send something, and then I'm going to receive something. So I have to change that over here as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take these guys out, delete that, and put it there. Okay. Oops. All right. Nope, that still doesn't look right. Okay, now it looks about right. So what I'm doing here is I've switched it around such that the order of sending and receiving is changed. So let's save that. Let's save that. And now if I run things again, let's clean up the screen here a little bit. And now let's go back here and let's see what's up. So nothing's connected here, and we can see no network connections. So now, boom. Okay, let's go take a look what happened here. Aha. There we go. There's our PID. We're listing on 5 and 5 again. 5. And perfect. Now, let's connect with this guy. Notice, okay, so now here's our established connection, right? The socket that is connected on both ends. So if you want to see the picture again, right? Right? And by the way, this one I forgot to put the name of this guy. This guy's called con. But notice this con is now connected to S on the other end. And notice something else. On this computer, we didn't pick this port. This is called an, I think I'm spelling this right, an ephemeral port. That's picked by the operating system, not by the programmer. It's a high port. Okay? The one we pick is this one for the server to listen on, to accept. So we go back now, and in this case, we've changed the order, so I can say hi here, and then server replies hi. Notice, as once the connection is established, once this line happens, we still have to run the server first. Okay, so accept has to run first. But once this connection is established, then we can send back and forth as we wish. Okay? So I hope that clears some things up about how networking works. Hope you enjoyed the video. See ya.